I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. They locked me in the bathroom for 12 hours over a hot shower. Yes, you read that right. My own son trapped me in there. Wet, cold, and alone. Because I wasted hot water. I was 57 years old with decades of nursing behind me, and I stood shivering in that bathroom like a prisoner. But they never imagined I still owned the deed to the villa. 3 weeks later, I sold it while they were at work and left the country forever. But let me start at the beginning. The hospital room was dim except for the steady green line tracing Juan's heartbeat on the monitor. My husband looked smaller than I remembered, as if the cancer had carved away his edges, leaving only the essence of the man I'd loved for 30 years. I held his hand, both of us knowing we were counting hours, not days. His skin felt paper thin, but his grip was still steady, still my anchor. "Laura," he whispered, his voice raspy from the medication. "Promise me you'll protect Rafa." I blinked back tears. "I will." But Juan's eyes found mine, clearer than they'd been in days. "Protect yourself, too." I nodded, my throat too tight for words. Juan reached for the small wooden box on his bedside table. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing his silver watch and a delicate locket I'd never seen before. "The watch is for Raphael when he graduates medical school," he said. "And this," he lifted the locket, "is for you." I took it, fingers shaking. Inside was a photo of Juan in his white doctor's coat on one side, and on the other Raphael at 5 years old, his eyes wide with wonder as he held his father's stethoscope. "This is our promise," I whispered, clasping it around my neck. "He'll never feel alone." Juan gave a faint smile, but his eyes conveyed something deeper, something I wouldn't understand until years later. He slipped an envelope from beneath his pillow and pressed it into my hands. "Don't open this now," he said. "Save it for when you most need guidance. When something breaks." I tucked it into my purse without question, not realizing it would be years before I'd read those words. The machines flatlined 3 days later. I didn't scream or collapse. I simply held on to the locket and a promise I didn't yet realize would cost me everything. On the day we buried Juan, the sky was an impossible blue, too beautiful for grief. Raphael, just 10 years old, stood beside me at the grave, his small hand clutching mine so tightly it hurt. "Will we be okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice small against the enormity of our loss. I knelt beside him, eye to eye. "We'll always have each other," I promised. "And that's all we need." He nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. I wiped them away and held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair. In that moment, I would have given anything to shield him from pain. I just never imagined I'd need someone to shield me from him. The first years after Juan's death passed in a blur of double shifts and empty apartments. I picked up every nursing assignment I could, nights, weekends, holidays. The other nurses called me Saint Laura. They didn't see me crying in my car before shifts or falling asleep mid-dinner. Saints don't sleep. Saints don't eat right. Saints smile through exhaustion and come home to silent rooms. I'd slip into Raphael's bedroom at sunrise after night shifts, kiss his forehead, and leave a lunch with a note tucked inside. Little jokes, stick figure drawings, always signed with "Love you to the moon and back." We lived on coupons and bargain groceries. I patched the same pair of nursing shoes twice. I wore Juan's winter coat for years. The sleeves too long, but the weight comforting, like he was still holding me. Raphael grew tall and brilliant, just like his father. He excelled in science, won competitions, earned early college credits. I praised him like he was sunlight. I protected him like he was glass. "Mom, I got accepted to pre-med," he announced one evening, waving the acceptance letter. He was 17, tall and lanky, with Juan's eyes and smile. My heart swelled with pride and pain. "Just like your dad?" I whispered, brushing his hair from his eyes. "You'll wear the white coat, too." "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, hugging me tightly. Those words would echo in my mind years later when he forgot who made his success possible. I saved every penny for his medical school, birthday tips, tax refunds, overtime pay. I skipped doctor's appointments to afford his textbooks, postponed fixing the leaky roof to pay for his lab fees. "Mom, you need to take care of yourself, too," Raphael would say occasionally, noticing my exhaustion. I'd smile and wave away his concern. "I'm fine. Your education comes first." What I didn't tell him was how I'd started rationing my blood pressure medication to save money, or how I'd stand in grocery stores, calculating if I could afford both dinner and his application fees. The villa by the lemon tree was my one indulgence, the dream home Juan and I had always wanted. When I finally had enough saved, I bought it in secret, planning to surprise Raphael when he finished medical school. The lemon tree in the backyard was Juan's legacy. He'd always wanted one, said it would remind us that life could be both sweet and bitter at once. "One day," I whispered to the small tree after planting it, "our family will sit in its shade." I didn't know then that the shade would only witness my tears. The night Raphael passed his medical boards, I finally showed him the villa. His eyes widened as we pulled into the driveway. "Mom, what is this place?" "It's ours," I said simply. "I've been saving since Dad died." He walked through each room in stunned silence, touching the walls, opening windows. When he reached the backyard and saw the lemon tree now flourishing, he stopped. "Dad always wanted one of these," he whispered. "I know," I said, standing beside him. "He's still with us, in ways that matter." Raphael hugged me fiercely then, tears in his eyes. "I'll make you both proud," he promised. I believed him with every fiber of my being, and for a while he made good on that promise. He worked hard, showed compassion to patients, called me daily to check in. Then he met Gabriella, and everything changed. Gabriella Fletcher swept into Raphael's life like a summer storm, beautiful, intense, and leaving everything slightly rearranged in her wake. She was a pharmaceutical sales representative who met Raphael during his residency, all polished smiles and designer clothes. The first time he brought her to dinner at the villa, I noticed how her eyes scanned every corner, assessing rather than admiring. "What a quaint little place," she said, running her finger along the bookshelf. "It has character." I smiled politely. "Thank you. It's home." Raphael squeezed her hand. "Mom bought it herself. Worked extra shifts for years to save up." "How resourceful," Gabriella replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. During dinner, she spoke about her travels, her career goals, the new luxury condo development where she lived. I noticed Raphael watching her with fascination, nodding at everything she said. "And your family, Gabriella?" I asked, passing her the salad. "Where are they from?" A shadow crossed her face. "My parents divorced when I was 12. Dad remarried and moved to Phoenix. Mom struggles to make ends meet in Cleveland." Her tone was casual, but I caught the tightness in her jaw. "I learned early that you have to create your own security in this world." Later, as I cleared the dishes, I overheard them on the patio. "Your mom seems sweet," Gabriella said. "But this house, don't you want something more modern? Something that reflects your success?" Raphael's response was too quiet to hear, but the seed had been planted. They were engaged 3 months later. The ring was larger than anything I would have chosen for myself, diamonds catching light from every angle. "We're thinking a spring wedding," Raphael announced over Sunday dinner. "Something elegant at the Bayshore Hotel." I calculated quickly. The Bayshore's wedding packages started at $30,000. That's quite an expense, I said carefully. We deserve the best, Mom, Raphael replied, as Gabriella beamed beside him. I've worked hard to get here. I bit my tongue against the words that rose unbidden. We worked hard. Instead, I smiled and raised my glass. To your happiness. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months. Gabriella's vision grew increasingly elaborate. Imported flowers, custom gowns, 5-star catering. Raphael never questioned the mounting costs. Mom, we'd like you to contribute to the flower arrangements, Raphael said one evening. Gabriella's parents are covering the venue and we're handling the rest. I thought of my carefully managed savings, the nest egg I'd built for emergencies. Of course, I said. Whatever helps. The whatever turned out to be $12,000. I wrote the check without complaint. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my kitchen, turning Juan's envelope over in my hands. Save it for when you most need guidance. I was tempted to open it then, but something held me back. Things weren't broken yet, just changing. All parents watch their children grow away from them. This was natural. The wedding was a showcase of wealth and style. Gabriella floated down the aisle in ivory silk that probably cost more than 3 months of my nursing salary. Raphael looked handsome and nervous in his tuxedo, so much like Juan that my heart ached. I wore a simple blue dress I'd found on sale. My only extravagance, the professional hairstyling Gabriella had insisted upon. You look beautiful, Mom, Raphael said, kissing my cheek before the ceremony. So do you, I whispered, straightening his tie. Your father would be proud. At the reception, I was seated at table 12, far from the wedding party. The centerpieces were taller than conversation height, effectively isolating each guest. I recognized few faces. And you are? Asked the woman beside me, cocktail in hand. Laura Perez, I said, Raphael's mother. Oh, she seemed surprised. I thought you'd be at the head table. I smiled and sipped my water. I'm happy wherever I can see my son. Later, as the dancing started, I stood along the wall watching Raphael and Gabriella twirl across the floor. They moved like they belonged in a magazine spread, young, beautiful, untouchable. I slipped away early, unnoticed in the celebration. At home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the porch swing, looking at the lemon tree silhouetted against the night sky. They're starting their own life, Juan, I said to the stars, just like we did. But our beginning had been different. A small ceremony in my parents' backyard, potluck dinner, borrowed dress. We'd started with nothing but dreams and each other. Raphael and Gabriella were starting with everything, including expectations I wasn't sure anyone could fulfill. The next morning, I wrapped my gift and drove to their new apartment, a luxury high-rise downtown that Raphael had stretched his budget to afford. My present seemed inadequate now. The deed to the villa, transferred to their names, with the small room in back reserved for me. They were still opening gifts from the wedding when I arrived, surrounded by crystal and silver. Mom, come in, Raphael called, making space among the packages. You won't believe what Dad's old colleague Dr. Hernandez gave us. A week at his beach house in the Keys. I sat carefully on the edge of a white leather sofa that seemed designed for looking, not sitting. I brought something too, I said, handing Raphael the envelope. He opened it, eyes scanning the document, then widening in surprise. Mom, this is the deed to your house. Gabriella looked up sharply from the thank you note she was writing. Our house now, I corrected gently. I'm giving it to you both. I'll keep the back room, but everything else is yours. To start your family in. Raphael stared at the paper, then at me. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take good care of the lemon tree, I said, smiling through sudden tears. He hugged me tightly. You've given me everything, Mom. Everything. Over his shoulder, I caught Gabriella's expression, surprise mixed with calculation. She set down her pen and moved closer. "Laura, that's incredibly generous," she said, her voice warm but her eyes already reimagining the space. "We were just saying how we'd outgrown this apartment." She glanced around the expansive, professionally decorated living room, and I wondered what definition of outgrown could possibly apply. "When can we move in?" she asked, taking the deed from Raphael's hands to examine it. "Whenever you like," I replied. "It's your home now." I didn't tell them I'd kept my name on the deed as a co-owner, with conditions about my continued residency. The lawyer had advised it as a precaution, and something in me, some small voice, had agreed. "We'll make it beautiful, Laura," Gabriella promised, already scrolling through her phone. "I know this amazing interior designer who did my cousin's place in Coral Gables. I thought of the hand-sewn curtains I'd made for the living room, the bookshelf Juan had built, the kitchen tiles we'd selected together." "It's already beautiful," I said quietly. But no one was listening. Raphael and Gabriella were already planning renovations, their heads bent together over her phone, the gift of my life's work already being reimagined into something I might not recognize. They moved in 2 weeks later with a fleet of movers and more furniture than the villa could reasonably hold. I helped where I could, directing traffic and making sandwiches for the workers. "Mom, where should we put this?" Raphael asked, holding up a framed photo of Juan and me on our wedding day. Before I could answer, Gabriella swept in. "Oh, we can store that in the garage for now," she said brightly. "It doesn't really match our aesthetic." Raphael hesitated, glancing at me. "It's fine," I sadly said, though something in me flinched. "Your home, your choices." "Exactly," Gabriella beamed. "And speaking of choices, we're thinking of converting the guest room into a home gym. You don't mind, do you?" The guest room had been where I displayed Juan's medical books and awards. I swallowed hard. Of course not. By evening, I barely recognized my own home. My furniture had been relocated to the garage or replaced entirely. The warm colors I'd chosen were now declared dated and scheduled for repainting. Even the kitchen, my sanctuary, had been reorganized according to Gabriella's vision. "Isn't it amazing what a difference good design makes?" she asked, gesturing around the living room now filled with sleek, uncomfortable-looking furniture. "It's certainly different," I managed. Raphael seemed oblivious to my discomfort. "Wait till you see what we're planning for the backyard, Mom. Gabriella found this landscape architect who can transform it completely." "The backyard?" My heart raced. "What about the lemon tree?" "Oh, we're keeping that," Gabriella said quickly. "It just needs context. A proper garden around it, maybe a water feature." I nodded, relieved but unsettled. The lemon tree was Juan's legacy, the one thing I couldn't bear to see changed. That night in my small back room, now the only space that still felt like mine, I sat on the edge of the bed and held Juan's watch. I'd planned to give it to Raphael on his first day as a full-fledged doctor, but somehow the moment had never felt right. "Our boy is changing, Juan," I whispered to the empty room. Or maybe I just never saw this side of him before. The first few weeks established a pattern. I would wake early, make coffee, and sit on the porch watching the sunrise. By the time Raphael and Gabriella emerged, I'd have retreated to my room or left for errands. We existed in parallel, occasionally intersecting at dinner or on weekends. Then came the first restriction. I was baking bread one Saturday morning, kneading dough the way my mother had taught me. The kitchen filled with the yeasty scent of rising dough, when Gabriella appeared in yoga pants and a tight frown. "Laura," she said, her voice deliberately casual, "Raphael and I were thinking it might be good to establish some kitchen schedules. You know, so we're not all tripping over each other." I wiped flour from my hands. "Schedules?" "Nothing formal," she assured me. "Just Maybe you could use the kitchen before 7 a.m. or after 9 p.m. We're both working from home more often, and conference calls in the dining room get a bit difficult with cooking noises. I glanced at the clock. 10:30 a.m. And right now? Well, we have brunch with friends in an hour, and I was hoping to make my special mimosas. She gestured at my baking project spread across the counter. I see. I began cleaning up, though the bread was only half prepared. I'll finish this evening. You're the best, she said, already pulling out champagne flutes. That night I found a printed schedule taped to the refrigerator. Kitchen usage guidelines. My allotted times were exactly as Gabriella had suggested, before 7 a.m. and after 9 p.m. The remaining 14 hours belonged to her and Raphael. I stared at the paper, anger bubbling up unexpectedly. This was my kitchen, the heart of the home I'd worked decades to afford. Now I was being scheduled like an unwelcome houseguest. When Raphael came home, I showed him the paper. Is this really necessary? He looked uncomfortable but stood his ground. Gabriella's trying to create some structure, Mom. She's used to having her own space. And what am I used to? I asked quietly. He sighed. It's their house now, a voice whispered in my head. But another voice, stronger, fiercer, responded. Not yet, not legally. The kitchen was just the beginning. Within a month, there were new guidelines for the laundry room, the living room television, the thermostat settings, each presented as reasonable requests, each chipping away at my place in my own home. My books disappeared from shelves, reappearing in boxes in my room. Just decluttering, Gabriella explained cheerfully. Family photos were replaced with abstract art. Even the dishes I'd collected over years were deemed too eclectic and stored away in favor of matching white porcelain. I found myself spending more time in my room, the door closed against the steady erasure of my existence in the house I'd built. One evening, I overheard them in the kitchen. Don't you think she could contribute more to the utilities? Gabriella was saying. We're essentially subsidizing her. She gave us the house, Gabby, Raphael reminded her. But we're the ones paying for all the improvements. The new appliances, the landscaping, those aren't cheap. She's my mother, Raphael said, but his voice lacked conviction. And I'm your wife, Gabriella countered. Don't I come first now? There was a long pause before Raphael sighed. I'll talk to her about the utilities. The request came the next day, presented as a matter of fairness. I agreed without argument, though it meant dipping into my dwindling savings. The nursing home where I worked part-time had cut back my hours, and at 57, finding new employment wasn't easy. It's reasonable, I told myself as I wrote the check. I'm using the electricity and water, too. But reasonableness soon gave way to control. The first time the power went out in my room, I assumed it was an accident. I reported the tripped breaker to Raphael, who reset it with an apology. The second time, I found him at the breaker box deliberately. Mom, he said, not meeting my eyes. We're trying to conserve energy. No need to keep your room powered when you're not in it. I was in it, I said. Reading. He hesitated. Maybe use the living room lamps. They're more efficient. But the living room had become Gabriella's territory, filled with her friends and their judgmental glances. I retreated to my darkened room instead, using my phone's flashlight to read. Water came next. I was washing vegetables for dinner when the flow suddenly reduced to a trickle. We installed flow restrictors, Raphael explained when I called him at work. The water bill was getting out of hand. I can't even rinse lettuce, I protest. Use the spray bottle, he suggested, as if I were being unreasonable. The final straw should have been the bathroom incident, but it wasn't. Not yet. I had been gardening all afternoon, tending to the lemon tree and the few plants Gabriella's landscape architect had left untouched. I came inside, covered in dirt and sweat, desperate for a shower. The water was gloriously hot, soothing my aching muscles. I lost track of time, standing under the spray, eyes closed, remembering simpler days. A sharp knock broke my reverie. "Mom?" Raphael's voice cut through the steam. "How much longer?" "Just finishing," I called back. "You've been in there 20 minutes. Do you know how much hot water costs?" I turned off the faucet, surprised and embarrassed. "Sorry, I lost track of time." "We can't afford for you to lose track," he said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "We pay the bills here." I wrapped a towel around myself, cheeks burning. I said I was sorry. "Sorry doesn't lower the gas bill." He walked away, leaving me dripping and humiliated. That night I found a timer attached to the bathroom door. 10-minute maximum written in Gabriella's flowing script. I removed it and placed it on Raphael's dresser with a note. "I raised you better than this." The timer reappeared the next day, this time screwed into the door. I began timing my showers obsessively. 5 minutes, no more. I washed dishes with cold water, turned off lights even when I was in the room, unplugged appliances, anything to avoid another confrontation. Still, it wasn't enough. "Your mother used the air conditioning again while we were out," I overheard Gabriella telling Raphael one evening. "The smart thermostat logged it." "I'll talk to her," Raphael sighed, sounding tired. "Talk doesn't seem to work," Gabriella replied. "Maybe we need a different arrangement." I froze in the hallway, heart pounding. Were they planning to ask me to leave? Where would I go? My savings were nearly depleted from contributing to their household and subsidizing Raphael's education. I had no other family, no close friends nearby. For the first time, real fear gripped me. I retreated to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, clutching Juan's locket. "What do I do?" I whispered, opening it to see his face smiling back at me. My fingers brushed against something else, the edge of his envelope, still unopened after all these years. I'd kept it in my nightstand, saving it for when I truly needed guidance. Was now that time? Was this what broken looked like? Not yet, I decided. Things were tense but fixable. Raphael was still my son. He was just influenced, stressed. He'd remember who we were to each other, given time. I closed the locket and straightened my shoulders. Tomorrow would be better. I would make more effort, be less visible, need less space. But as I prepared for bed, checking that my phone was charged since my bedside lamp's bulb had mysteriously disappeared, I caught sight of my reflection in the small mirror above my dresser. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, shoulders hunched, eyes wary, mouth set in a thin line of perpetual caution. When had I become this person? This shadow slipping through hallways, counting minutes in the shower, apologizing for existence. "This isn't me," I whispered to my reflection. "This isn't the woman Juan loved. This isn't the mother Raphael respected." Something shifted inside me then. Not anger, not yet. Just awareness. A quiet recognition that something fundamental had changed in my relationship with my son, and perhaps it couldn't be unchanged. I didn't know then that in just 3 days, everything would shatter completely. That I would find myself locked in the bathroom, shivering in a thin towel for 12 hours while my son and his wife watched television on the other side of the door. I didn't know I would finally open Juan's letter and find the strength to reclaim my life. I only knew, standing there in the dim light of my phone's screen, that I was disappearing one restriction at a time. And somehow, I had to find my way back to myself before there was nothing left to find. The lemon tree rustled outside my window, its branches brushing against the glass, like fingers trying to wake me from a long sleep. "I'm still here," I whispered to it, to Juan, to myself. "I'm still here." But for how much longer, I couldn't say. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of ordinary day that gives no warning before it changes your life forever. The morning dawned clear and warm, typical Florida sunshine filtering through the blinds. I'd been up since 5:30 a.m., careful to finish my coffee and toast before Gabriella's kitchen hours began. The lemon tree needed attention. Juan's tree had developed brown spots on some leaves, so I spent the afternoon in the garden, pruning, fertilizing, and talking softly to it like it could understand my worries. "We're going to be fine," I whispered, patting the trunk the way Juan used to. "We always find a way." By evening, my joints ached from kneeling in the soil. My clothes were stained with dirt and sweat clung to my skin. I waited until 7:30 p.m., when Raphael and Gabriella usually watched their shows, to slip into the bathroom unnoticed. The hot water felt like heaven against my tired muscles. Steam rose around me, fogging the mirror and wrapping me in momentary comfort. I closed my eyes, letting the spray wash away the day's tension, forgetting, just for a moment, to count the minutes. That's when the banging started. 3 sharp knocks that cut through the steam like a knife. "Mom, how much longer?" Raphael's voice had an edge I rarely heard. I turned down the water. "Just finishing up, honey." "You've been in there 20 minutes. Had it been that long?" I quickly shut off the faucet. "Sorry, I lost track of time. I was gardening all day." There was a pause, and then his voice dropped lower. "You don't pay the bills here, Mom. You don't get to waste hot water." The words stung more than they should have. I reached for my towel, wrapped it around me, and moved to open the door. But the knob wouldn't turn. I tried again, harder this time. Nothing. "Raphael?" My voice rose slightly. The door's stuck. Silence. Then footsteps walking away. "Raphael!" I called louder, a flutter of panic rising in my chest. "I can't open the door." No response. I pressed my ear against the wood. From the living room came the unmistakable sound of the television volume increasing. I could make out Gabriella's laugh, light and carefree. They had locked me in. At first, I thought it must be a misunderstanding. Raphael would realize the door wasn't opening and come back. Any minute now. I sat on the closed toilet lid, towel pulled tight around my shoulders. The bathroom air was cooling rapidly as the steam dissipated. Goosebumps rose on my arms. 5 minutes passed. 10. 20. I knocked again, louder this time. "Raphael, please! The door is locked!" The television volume rose higher in response. Reality dawned slowly, then all at once. This was deliberate. My son had locked me in the bathroom and was ignoring my calls for help. "This isn't happening," I whispered to myself. But the cold tile beneath my bare feet said otherwise. I tried everything. Credit cards to slide between the door and frame, bobby pins in the small emergency hole, even attempting to remove the hinges with the tweezers from my makeup bag. Nothing worked. This wasn't a simple privacy lock, but a deadbolt installed from the outside. When had they added that? How long had they been planning this? An hour passed, then 2. The towel grew damp and cold against my skin. I had no phone, no warm clothes, just a thin piece of fabric between me and the increasingly chilly air. I called out periodically, my voice growing hoarse. Each time, the only response was silence or the television volume increasing. By midnight, the house had gone quiet. Lights went off in the hallway, casting the bathroom into deeper darkness. I sat on the floor now, knees pulled to my chest, counting tiles to keep my mind focused. Hunger gnawed at my stomach. Thirst scratched at my throat. I sipped water from the bathroom faucet, the metallic taste making me wince. "I raised you to care, not to cage," I whispered to the door, the words hanging in the air unanswered. In those long, dark hours, something in me began to shift. Not break, shift, like tectonic plates realigning after years of pressure, moving toward an inevitable quake. I thought about every moment that had led here, every boundary crossed, every dignity stripped away. Every time I'd swallowed my pride and told myself it was temporary, fixable, understandable. This was none of those things. Around 3 a.m., I stopped calling out. I stopped hoping for rescue. I simply waited, gathering my strength, my resolve hardening with each passing hour. Dawn eventually came, pale light seeping under the door. I'd been locked in for almost 12 hours, wet, cold, hungry, and alone. When the lock finally turned, I was standing, towel wrapped around me like armor. Raphael appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, not meeting my eyes. "Don't waste water again," he muttered, then turned and walked away. I stepped into the hallway on stiff legs, dignity intact despite everything. And I said nothing. No scream, no plea, no question, just silence. Because something inside me had indeed broken overnight, but not in the way they expected. What broke wasn't my spirit, but the chains of denial that had kept me blind. And something else had just begun. I moved through that day like a ghost, performing the routines expected of me. I made coffee, avoided the kitchen during Gabriella's hours, nodded politely when spoken to. Raphael and Gabriella seemed to consider the matter closed. No apologies, no acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just breakfast as usual, work conversations, plans for weekend brunches with friends. In the afternoon, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the small box where I kept Juan's envelope. My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted the flap, breaking the seal after all these years. His handwriting hit me first. Strong, confident strokes I hadn't seen since his illness weakened his grip. I traced the letters with my fingertip before reading. My beloved Laura, if you're reading this, then something has broken. Maybe in the world, maybe inside you, maybe both. I don't know what will bring you here, but I know this. You've always had a heart big enough to carry others. Just don't forget it's also yours to protect. Your love is your strength, but don't let it be your cage. Raphael will grow into his own man, make his own choices. Some may hurt you. If they do, remember this. Loving someone doesn't mean disappearing for them. The deed to our home is in your name alone. I arranged it this way for a reason. It's your safety net, your independence, your choice. When you give it to Raphael, if you give it to him, make it conditional on respect. You deserve to be seen, Laura. Not as a mother only, but as the remarkable woman I've loved every day of my life. Your love isn't measured by how much you give up. It's measured by how well you teach others to give back. If you've opened this letter, it's time to remember who you are. Stand tall. Speak clear. Choose yourself. I'm with you always. Juan tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. I hadn't cried since the bathroom. Hadn't allowed myself that release. Now they came in a flood. Years of accumulated grief and recognition washing through me. Juan had seen this coming somehow, had known that my love for Raphael might someday become a weapon against me. I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out the folder of legal documents I kept hidden beneath old photo albums. There it was, the deed to the villa, still in my name. I had never fully transferred ownership to Raphael, only created a living agreement that allowed them residence while I maintained ownership. The lawyer had advised this arrangement as protection for my retirement years. At the time, it had seemed unnecessarily cautious. Now it felt like a lifeline. I studied the document, noting the clause about respectful cohabitation that I'd insisted on including. At the time, Raphael had signed without reading carefully, eager to move in. Gabriella had been distracted by renovation plans. Neither had realized the power I still held. A soft knock at my door startled me. I quickly tucked away the papers. "Come in," I called, wiping my eyes. Raphael entered hesitantly. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort. "Mom, about yesterday," he began, not quite meeting my gaze. "Yes?" I kept my voice neutral, waiting. He shifted uncomfortably. "We need to discuss the utility bills. They've been much higher than expected." My heart sank. No apology, no acknowledgement, just more financial demands. "I see," I said quietly. "Gabriella thinks it would be fair if you contributed more, given the water and electricity usage." I studied my son's face, the tension around his eyes, the slight flush on his cheeks. There was something beneath his demands, something more than Gabriella's influence. "Raphael," I said carefully, "is everything all right? Financially, I mean?" His expression flickered, surprise, then alarm, then careful neutrality. "Of course," he said too quickly. "We're doing great. The house renovations just cost more than expected. But I'd been a mother too long not to recognize when my child was hiding something." The pieces suddenly connected. The aggressive cost-cutting, Gabriella's anxious monitoring of expenses, the increasing pressure for me to contribute. They were in trouble. "I'd like to see the bills," I said. "If I'm going to contribute more, I should understand what I'm paying for." "That's not necessary," he replied, backing toward the door. "Just an extra $200 a month should cover it." $200 I didn't have. My part-time nursing salary barely covered my personal expenses and the contributions I was already making. "I'll need time to arrange that," I said. He nodded, relieved to escape further questions. "Thanks, Mom. You're always there when we need you." After he left, I sat motionless, Juan's letter in one hand, the deed in the other. Then I reached for my phone and did something I should have done months ago. I called Maria Rodriguez, my oldest friend and a family law attorney who had helped draft the living agreement. "Laura?" Her voice was warm with surprise. "It's been ages." "Maria," I said, keeping my voice low, "I need your help. Can we meet somewhere?" "Not at my house." There was a brief pause. Maria had known me for 30 years, long enough to hear the urgency beneath my calm tone. "The library on Palm Avenue," she said without hesitation. "Tomorrow at 11 a.m. The study rooms in back give privacy." "Thank you," I whispered, relief washing through me. That night I lay awake, listening to the house settle around me. From upstairs came the murmur of Raphael and Gabriella's voices, too low to make out words but tense in rhythm. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a different life, a life where I wasn't shrinking, apologizing, disappearing, a life where I remembered what Juan had always seen in me, strength beneath the sacrifice. I touched the locket around my neck, feeling the weight of the photos inside. My husband, my son. Both lost to me in different ways. "I'm still here," I whispered to the darkness, but this time the words weren't a plea to be noticed. They were a promise to myself. The public library hadn't changed in years. Still the same worn carpet, the same faint scent of books and coffee, the same elderly volunteer at the front desk who smiled in recognition as I entered. I found Maria already waiting in a small study room at the back, legal pad ready, reading glasses perched on her nose. She stood when she saw me, arms opening for a hug. "Laura Perez," she said, embracing me tightly. "Too many years." I hugged her back, fighting unexpected tears. When was the last time someone had been genuinely happy to see me? Maria held me at arm's length, her sharp lawyer's eyes assessing. "You've lost weight, and not in the good way." Her directness was why I'd always loved her. No pretense, no polite fictions. "It's been a difficult year," I admitted, taking the seat across from her. Tell me everything, she said, clicking her pen. Start at the beginning. So I did. The wedding, the villa, Raphael's transformation, Gabriella's manipulations, the slow erosion of my place in my own home, and finally, the bathroom. 12 hours locked away like an inconvenience to be contained. Maria's expression darkened as I spoke, her pen moving rapidly across the legal pad. When I finished, she set it down deliberately, removed her glasses, and met my gaze. That's abuse, Laura. Elder abuse, legally speaking. The word landed like a stone. Abuse. I'd never allowed myself to frame it that way. He's my son, I said weakly. And that makes it worse, not better. Maria's voice was gentle but firm. You said you still hold the deed? I nodded, pulling the folder from my bag. I never transferred ownership. We have a living arrangement agreement that allows them residence while I maintain ownership. A slow smile spread across Maria's face as she reviewed the documents. Laura Perez, you brilliant woman. This is airtight. And look here. She pointed to a clause on the second page. Grounds for termination include creation of a hostile living environment and actions detrimental to the health and well-being of any occupant. Being locked in a bathroom for 12 hours definitely qualifies. Hope flickered within me. What are you saying? I'm saying you have options. She leaned forward. You can legally evict them, or, she tapped the paper significantly, you could sell the property entirely. Sell it? The thought had never occurred to me. The villa was our family home, the place I'd worked decades to afford, the ground where Juan's lemon tree grew. Maria watched my face. Just consider it. You deserve peace, Laura, and financial security. She helped me draft a formal letter documenting the bathroom incident and other concerning behaviors, to be kept as evidence if needed. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want, Laura? Not what Raphael wants or what you think you should want. What do you want? I closed my eyes, searching for an honest answer. I want to remember who I was before I became invisible. I want to feel safe in my own home. I want to sleep without wondering if the water or electricity will be cut off to punish me. And do you think that's possible with Raphael and Gabriella still controlling the house? The question hung in the air between us. Deep down, I already knew the answer. I need time to think, I said finally. Maria nodded, patting my hand. Take all the time you need, but secure your important documents first. Birth certificate, social security card, financial records. Keep them somewhere safe, not in the house. As I was gathering my things to leave, Maria stopped me with a gentle touch on my arm. One more thing, she said, her expression thoughtful. I have clients, a young couple, Michael and Elena Thompson. She's a nurse, like you. They've been looking for a family home in Sarasota, something with character, not those soulless new developments. Maria, I began, uncertain. Just think about it, she urged. They're good people. They'd love that lemon tree. Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not happy exactly, but clearer. As if a fog had lifted, revealing a path I'd been unable to see. That afternoon, while Raphael and Gabriella were at work, I began a careful inventory of my possessions. The furniture I'd stored in the garage. The photos and mementos that had been boxed away. Juan's books and medical awards. I made lists of what mattered, what could be replaced, what needed to be secured. In my nightstand drawer, I placed a small notebook. On the first page, I wrote 5 words. Confirm deed. Call Maria. Quiet sale. New account. Leave. Not a plan yet. Just possibilities. Options that were mine alone to choose. Over the next few days, I moved with new purpose. I visited my bank and opened a separate account under my maiden name. I quietly gathered my important documents and stored them in a safe deposit box. I researched apartments in different cities, different countries. Lisbon caught my eye, the city Juan and I had always dreamed of visiting. Terracotta rooftops, ocean breezes, a place where no one knew me as Raphael's mother or Juan's widow. Just Laura. One morning I found myself studying flight prices on my phone. One-way tickets, a fresh start. Was I really considering this? Leaving the home I'd built, the son I'd raised, the life I'd known? The question answered itself that evening when I overheard Raphael and Gabriella in their home office, door slightly ajar. "The property values in this neighborhood have skyrocketed," Gabriella was saying excitedly. "If we renovate the kitchen and master bath, we could list it for at least 40% more than the current value." "Mom gave us this house to live in, not to flip," Raphael replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "She gave it to us, period. It's ours to do with as we please." Gabriella's tone sharpened. "Besides, we need the capital if your practice is going to expand. That medical building on Gulf Drive isn't going to finance itself." I know. The bank wants a bigger down payment than I expected." "Exactly. And once we sell this place, we can get that gorgeous new construction in Lakewood Ranch. You know, the one with the home theater and infinity pool?" "What about Mom?" Raphael asked, quieter now. "Where would she go?" There was a pause, then Gabriella's voice, carefully casual. "There's that nice assisted living facility near your office. Sunshine Gardens? They have those cute little apartments for independent seniors." My blood ran cold. Assisted living? I was 57, not 87. Still working, still active, still capable of living independently. "She's not that old, Gabby," Raphael protested weakly. "But she will be eventually. Better to get her settled somewhere with proper care before she needs it, rather than scrambling later." I backed away from the door, heart pounding. They weren't just controlling my present. They were planning my future without my input or consent. And they intended to sell my home, Juan's lemon tree, our memories, our life, for a profit. For an infinity pool and home theater. In that moment, my decision crystallized. The vague list in my notebook transformed into concrete steps. That night, I called Maria from the privacy of the backyard, speaking softly beneath the lemon tree's branches. "I'm ready," I told her. "Tell the Thompsons I'd like to meet them." 3 days later, I met Michael and Elena Thompson at Maria's office. He was a software engineer with kind eyes. She was a pediatric nurse with a warm laugh that reminded me of my younger self. "Mrs. Perez," Elena said, taking my hands in hers. "Maria told us a little about your situation. I want you to know we'd cherish your home if you decided to sell to us." "The lemon tree especially," Michael added. "My grandfather had citrus trees. There's something special about growing your own fruit." I studied them carefully. They weren't much older than Raphael had been when I'd bought the villa, starting out, dreaming of family, looking for roots. "Tell me why you want an older home," I said. "Most young couples prefer new construction." Elena glanced at Michael before answering. "We want a place with character, with history. Somewhere our children will remember playing hide and seek in unique corners, not identical white rooms." "And honestly," Michael added, "we're tired of soulless apartments with paper-thin walls. We want neighbors who know our names, trees older than our relationship, a home that needs to be loved, not just decorated." Something settled in my chest as they spoke. A recognition, a rightness. This was what I'd wanted for Raphael once. A home in the true sense, not a status symbol or investment property. "I haven't decided yet," I said carefully. "But if I do sell, I'd like it to be to people who will love it." Maria outlined the process. A private sale, no realtors or listings that might alert Raphael and Gabriella. The Thompsons would arrange financing. We would agree on a fair market price, and the closing could happen within 3 weeks. "And where will you go, Mrs. Perez?" Elena asked gently. I hesitated before answering, the dream still too fragile to share widely. "Somewhere new, somewhere I can remember who I am." Walking home, I felt strangely calm. Not happy, there was too much grief for happiness, but purposeful, clear-eyed. I was so lost in thought that I nearly collided with Raphael at our front gate. He looked startled, then concerned. "Mom, where have you been? I tried calling." I showed him my silenced phone. "Library. I must have missed your calls. Is everything okay?" His expression softened. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Gabriella and I were thinking we should have a family dinner tonight. It's been a while since we really spent time together." Warning bells rang faintly, but I smiled. "That sounds lovely." "Great! Gabriella's making her famous risotto. 7 o'clock? I nodded, watching him bound up the steps with renewed energy. Something had shifted in his demeanor, less tense, more the son I remembered. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to hope. Perhaps they'd reflected on their behavior. Perhaps tonight would mark a new beginning, a reconciliation that would render my secret plans unnecessary. How desperately I wanted to be wrong about them. The dinner table was set beautifully when I emerged from my room that evening. Gabriella's expensive dinnerware, candles, even fresh flowers in the center. "This is lovely," I said, genuinely surprised. Gabriella beamed, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. "We thought it was time for a proper family meal. Raphael, open the wine, will you?" The risotto was delicious, the conversation surprisingly easy. We talked about neutral topics, a movie Raphael had enjoyed, a patient's recovery, the unseasonably warm weather. No mention of utilities or schedules or contributions. Halfway through dinner, Raphael cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been thinking about the future." My fork paused midway to my mouth. "Oh?" "Yes," Gabriella interjected smoothly. "We realize things have been tense lately, and we want to make it right." Raphael nodded earnestly. "This house has so much potential. We've been discussing some renovations that would make everyone more comfortable." "Renovations?" I repeated carefully. "Nothing drastic," Gabriella assured me. "Just updating the kitchen, expanding the master suite, maybe converting that small room you're in now into a proper guest suite for you." My small room, the only space that remained mine. Now they wanted to improve it too? "We could add a private entrance," Raphael continued enthusiastically. "Give you more independence. Or make it easier to separate me from the main house," I thought. "And the best part," Gabriella added, leaning forward conspiratorially, "once the renovations are complete, the property value will increase significantly. It's a smart investment for all of us." There it was. Not reconciliation. Preparation. They were laying groundwork for their plan to sell, trying to secure my cooperation. "That sounds thorough," I said neutrally. "How would these renovations be financed?" A quick glance passed between them. "Well," Raphael said, "we've been pre-approved for a home equity loan, with the house as collateral." My house, my collateral, my heart sank. "Of course," Gabriella added quickly. "We'd need you to sign some paperwork. Just formalities, really." "What kind of paperwork?" I asked, though I already knew. Raphael shifted uncomfortably. "Just updating the deed. The bank needs it to be solely in our names for the loan approval." And there it was, the true purpose of this warm family dinner. They needed my signature to take full ownership, to leverage my life's work for their ambitions. "I see," I said quietly. "It's really the best solution for everyone," Gabriella continued, misinterpreting my silence as consideration. "You'll have a beautiful updated space, and eventually When you're ready for something simpler, the increased equity means we could help you find the perfect retirement arrangement. Retirement arrangement, like the nice assisted living facility she'd mentioned to Raphael. This is a lot to think about, I said, folding my napkin deliberately. I'll need time to consider it. Alarm flashed across Gabriella's face. The loan officer is expecting us Monday. There's really not much to consider, Laura. It's just paperwork. Nevertheless, I said, standing slowly, I'll need the weekend to review everything. If you'll excuse me, I'm feeling rather tired. Raphael rose halfway. Mom? Good night, I said firmly. Thank you for dinner. In my room, I leaned against the closed door, heart racing. They were accelerating their plans. Monday was just 4 days away, which meant I needed to accelerate mine as well. With shaking hands, I pulled out my notebook and pen. I crossed out my tentative timeline and wrote a new one. Tomorrow, finalize sale with Thompson's. Friday, transfer funds to new account. Saturday, book one-way ticket to Lisbon. Sunday, pack essentials only. Monday morning, leave before they wake. It wasn't how I'd wanted this to end. I'd held out hope, however faint, that Raphael would remember who we'd been to each other, that he'd recognize what he was becoming and step back from the edge. But tonight had confirmed what I'd feared. My son was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized, someone willing to manipulate, isolate, and control his own mother for financial gain. I touched the locket around my neck, opening it to see Juan's face smiling back at me. I'm sorry, I whispered. I tried to protect him. I tried to love him enough, but I can't disappear for him anymore. Outside my window, the lemon tree's leaves rustled in the night breeze, as if in agreement. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the end, and perhaps, if I was brave enough, the start of something new. In the darkness of my small room, I made a final promise to myself. No more cages, not even gilded ones built by my own child. It was time to fly. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the universe approved of my decision. I dressed with care. Not my usual faded jeans and sweater, but a tailored blue dress I'd worn to Raphael's medical school graduation. Battle armor of a different kind. Maria's office was quiet when I arrived, just the gentle hum of air conditioning and the click of her assistant's keyboard. The Thompsons were already waiting, Elena clutching a folder of financial documents, Michael nervously adjusting his tie. Mrs. Perez, Elena said, standing to greet me, we can't thank you enough for considering us. I studied them again, looking for any signs of the entitlement I'd grown to recognize in Gabriella. I found none, just honest excitement and a touch of anxiety. Call me Laura, I said, offering a small smile. If we're going to do this, we should be on first-name terms. Maria guided us through the paperwork with brisk efficiency. Purchase agreement, disclosure forms, transfer of deed. Each signature bringing me closer to freedom, each initial severing another tie. The price is fair? I asked, hesitating before the final signature. The amount was substantial, enough to support me for years if I was careful. Michael nodded earnestly. More than fair. We've looked at comparable properties. This is market value. And the condition about the lemon tree? Elena touched my hand gently. It's in the contract, Laura. We'll care for it like it's our own family heirloom. I promise. I signed my name for the last time, the pen slightly unsteady in my grip. 27 years of ownership transferred in a single stroke. Congratulations, Maria said, sealing the documents in a large envelope. The funds will be transferred to your new account by Monday morning. The Thompsons can take possession immediately after. Monday, I repeated softly. The same day Raphael and Gabriella planned to have me sign away my rights. As we stood to leave, Elena surprised me with a hug. "Thank you for trusting us with your home," she whispered. "We'll honor its history." I hugged her back, throat tight with unexpected emotion. "Make new memories there," I managed. "Happy ones." Outside, the Florida sunshine seemed brighter somehow, the air lighter against my skin. I had no regrets, only a strange mixture of grief and liberation washing through me in equal measure. My next stop was the travel agency 3 blocks away. The young woman behind the counter looked surprised when I requested a one-way ticket to Lisbon. "Vacation?" she asked, typing into her computer. "A new beginning," I replied. "Just you?" Her eyes flicked to my wedding ring, still worn after all these years. "Just me." She nodded, asking no more questions as she booked my flight for Monday morning. Early enough that I could leave before Raphael and Gabriella woke, late enough that the bank transfer would have cleared. "You'll need to arrange accommodations in Lisbon," she reminded me, handing over the confirmation. "Shall I help with that?" "No, thank you," I said. "I'd like to find my way once I arrive." The spontaneity of that decision surprised even me. Laura Perez, who had planned every moment of her life around others' needs for decades, now embracing uncertainty. The weekend passed in careful preparation. I sorted through my belongings, selecting only what mattered most: Juan's watch, our wedding photos, a few cherished books, clothes that would fit in a single suitcase. Everything else could be replaced or left behind. Raphael and Gabriella seemed to sense something had changed. They watched me with confused looks when I declined dinner on Saturday, claiming a headache. On Sunday, Gabriella made a point of showing me renovation magazines, circling designs for your new space. I nodded and smiled, saying little. "Are you feeling all right, Mom?" Raphael asked Sunday evening, finding me on the patio beneath the lemon tree. "You've been quiet." I looked at my son, really looked at him, wondering when he'd become this stranger with familiar eyes. "I'm fine," I said, "just reflective." He shifted uncomfortably. "About tomorrow, the bank appointment. We'll talk about it tomorrow," I interrupted gently. "Everything will be clear then." He seemed relieved, mistaking my calmness for acquiescence. He kissed my cheek before heading inside, the first affectionate gesture in months. I remained outside as darkness fell, saying goodbye to the lemon tree, to the home I'd loved, to the life I was choosing to leave. My fingers traced the rough bark one last time. "He planted you," I whispered, "but I tended you. You'll grow without me now." That night, I barely slept. I checked and rechecked my travel documents, the small bag I'd packed, the letter I'd written explaining my decision. Not apologizing, explaining. There was a difference. I placed the letter in an envelope with Juan's watch. Raphael should have it, despite everything. It was his inheritance, the legacy his father had intended for him. At 4 a.m., I rose and dressed silently. The house was dark and quiet. Raphael and Gabriella's soft snores drifting from upstairs. I moved through the rooms one final time, touching furniture, remembering holidays and quiet evenings and a life that no longer existed. In the kitchen, I left my house key and the envelope on the counter where it would be seen. I tucked my suitcase in the trunk of the taxi waiting at the curb, its engine a soft purr in the pre-dawn stillness. At the gate, I turned back for one last look. The villa looked peaceful in the moonlight, the lemon tree a gentle shadow against the pale walls. I whispered goodbye, not to the house, but to the woman I'd been there, the woman who had diminished herself to avoid conflict, who had confused sacrifice with love. The taxi driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Airport?" he confirmed. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I have a plane to catch." As we pulled away, I didn't look back. The path ahead was uncertain, frightening in its freedom. But for the first time in years, it was truly mine to choose. Raphael woke at 7:15 a.m. to the sound of his alarm, reaching blindly to silence it. Beside him, Gabriella stirred, mumbling something about coffee. "I'll check on Mom," he said, pulling on a t-shirt. "Make sure she's ready for the bank appointment." The house was quiet as he padded down the hallway, unusual for this hour. Normally, I would be in the kitchen already, coffee brewing, breakfast prepared despite the restrictions they'd placed on my kitchen use. "Mom?" Raphael knocked on my bedroom door, then opened it when no answer came. The room was empty. Bed made with hospital corners, surface clean but noticeably different. The nightstand was bare of photos. The closet door stood open, revealing half-empty shelves. My presence had been reduced, condensed, removed. A flutter of anxiety quickened his steps as he moved toward the kitchen. There, on the counter where I'd left them, lay the key, the envelope, and now visible in the morning light, a third item, the deed to the villa, with a yellow post-it note attached. "The house has been sold. New owners arrived today. Please be out by noon." Raphael stared at the paper, uncomprehending. Sold? How could it be sold? The house was theirs, or would be after I signed the transfer papers today. With shaking hands, he tore open the envelope, finding my letter and Juan's watch inside. "Raphael, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Not just from the house, but from the country. I've sold the villa to a young couple who will cherish it as I once did. As you once did, before it became just another asset to leverage. The choice to leave wasn't made lightly or quickly. It built slowly, with every restriction, every criticism, every dignity stripped away. It crystallized the night you locked me in the bathroom for 12 hours over hot water, water I had paid for, in a house I still owned. Your father left you his watch to mark the kind of man he believed you would become. I've kept it safe all these years, waiting for that man to emerge. I still believe he exists somewhere inside you, beneath Gabriella's influence and your own ambition. I won't tell you where I've gone. I need space to remember who I am beyond being your mother. Perhaps someday, when you remember who you are beyond being Gabriella's husband, we might find each other again. The lemon tree was your father's legacy. Please ask the new owners to let you visit it occasionally. It might remind you of what matters. I loved you enough to give you everything. I love myself enough to leave. Mom." Raphael sank onto a kitchen stool, the watch heavy in his palm, the deed and its implications heavier in his mind. "What's wrong?" Gabriella appeared in the doorway, silk robe tied loosely around her waist. "Where's your mother?" Wordlessly, he handed her the deed with its post-it note. Her face drained of color as she read it, then flushed red with anger. "This is a joke," she snapped. "She can't sell the house. It's ours. We live here." "Apparently it was never ours," Raphael said quietly, the full weight of my letter settling into him. "The deed was always in her name. She only gave us the right to live here." "That's ridiculous. She gave us the house as a wedding present. Everyone knows that." "Did you ever actually see the transfer documents?" Gabriella's silence was answer enough. "Call her," she demanded, pacing the kitchen. "Make her stop this nonsense." Raphael tried. My phone went straight to voicemail. He tried Maria's office next, only to be told calmly that the sale was legal, final, and irrevocable. "The new owners will be arriving at noon," the receptionist informed him. "Rodriguez suggests you use the remaining time to pack your essentials." As if summoned by the conversation, a car pulled into the driveway. The Thompsons emerged, faces nervous but determined as they approached the front door. Raphael opened it before they could knock. "There's been a mistake," he began. Michael looked uncomfortable but stood his ground. "No mistake, Dr. Perez. We purchased this house from Laura Perez. We have all the legal documentation." He held up a folder similar to the one I had signed 3 days earlier. "This is our home," Gabriella interjected, pushing past Raphael. "We've lived here for years." "As tenants," Elena said gently. "According to the paperwork, your mother maintained ownership. She had every legal right to sell." "Where is she?" Raphael demanded. "Where did she go?" The couple exchanged glances. "We don't know," Michael answered honestly. "She didn't share her plans with us." The next few hours passed in a blur of panic and disbelief. Raphael and Gabriella called lawyers who confirmed what they didn't want to hear. The sale was legitimate. They called friends who offered temporary accommodations but couldn't hide their shock at the situation. They called my former colleagues at the nursing home who claimed no knowledge of my whereabouts but couldn't quite hide their satisfaction at my actions. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. By afternoon, curious neighbors had gathered at their windows and porches, watching the spectacle unfold. Raphael and Gabriella hastily loading suitcases into their cars, the Thompsons patiently waiting on the front steps, a moving truck arriving with the young couple's possessions. "Did you know about this, Maria?" Raphael demanded of my neighbor, who had lived beside us for 15 years. The older woman crossed her arms. "I suspected something was wrong when I stopped seeing your mother outside. She used to garden every day. Then suddenly nothing, like she was a prisoner in her own home." "That's not true," Gabriella protested. "She chose to stay in her room." Maria's eyebrows rose. "Did she? Or was she hiding from you two?" By sunset, Raphael and Gabriella had relocated to a hotel, their carefully curated life suddenly uprooted. The bank called to rescind the loan pre-approval. Colleagues at the hospital began to whisper. The story, or versions of it, spread rapidly through their social circles. "Did you hear? Rafael Perez locked his mother in the bathroom overnight. I heard they were trying to commit her to a home and take her property. My nurse friend says Laura was paying for everything while they controlled the thermostat." The professional consequences came swiftly. Patients began canceling appointments, uncomfortable with the rumors. Fellow doctors grew distant. The hospital administration called Raphael in for a discussion about ethics and elder care. Gabriella faced her own fallout. The pharmaceutical company she represented placed her on leave pending an investigation into character concerns. Her carefully cultivated social media presence, once filled with influencer partnerships and aspirational content, became a target for criticism. The strain revealed cracks in their marriage that had been papered over with ambition and acquisition. They argued constantly about me, about money, about who was to blame. "You pushed too hard," Raphael accused during one particularly bitter fight. "She would never have left if you hadn't treated her like a burden." "Me?" Gabriella laughed coldly. "Who locked her in the bathroom, Raphael? That was all you. I never forced you to be cruel to your own mother." 3 weeks after my departure, Gabriella packed her bags. "This isn't what I signed up for," she told Raphael, standing in their hotel room surrounded by the meager possessions they'd managed to take from the villa. "I married a successful doctor with a beautiful home and bright future. Not—" She gestured around the generic room. "This. So you're leaving? Now? When everything's falling apart?" Her smile was sad but determined. "That's exactly when people like me leave, Raphael. I told you the day we met. I create my own security in this world. This situation isn't secure." She kissed his cheek one last time. "Your mother was right about one thing. You need to figure out who you are beyond being my husband. Good luck with that." After she left, Raphael sat alone on the hotel bed, turning his father's watch over in his hands. The weight of it seemed to grow heavier with each rotation, laden with expectation and disappointment. He thought back to the bathroom door, to the sound of my voice calling his name, to the deliberate choice he'd made to turn up the television instead. When had he become someone who could do that? When had ambition and convenience overridden basic decency? The watch ticked steadily in his palm. He fastened it around his wrist, the first time he'd worn it since receiving it. The band was loose, the face scratched at the edges. A working doctor's watch, not a status symbol. That night, Raphael drove back to the villa. He parked across the street, watching as Elena and Michael moved about the kitchen, visible through the windows. The lemon tree was illuminated by new garden lights they'd installed, its branches more robust than he remembered. They were taking good care of it, as promised. He didn't approach, didn't knock, just watched the home he'd lost, not through bad luck or circumstance, but through his own choices, his own cruelty. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered to the empty car. "I'm so sorry." But I was long gone, building a new life across an ocean, and all the apologies in the world couldn't change what had already been broken. The apartment I found in Lisbon wasn't grand, just 2 small rooms with a narrow balcony overlooking terracotta rooftops. The floors creaked, the plumbing was temperamental, and the kitchen barely fit one person. It was perfect. My first week passed in a fog of jet lag and culture shock. I spoke no Portuguese beyond the few phrases I'd practiced on the flight. The currency confused me. The narrow, winding streets left me constantly lost. Yet beneath the disorientation lay a curious sense of liberation. No one here knew me as Raphael's mother or Juan's widow. No one had expectations of who I should be or how I should behave. For perhaps the first time since childhood, I was simply Laura. "Bom dia," called the elderly man who ran the cafe beneath my apartment. He smiled encouragingly as I fumbled with coins for my morning coffee. "Bom dia," I replied, the word still awkward on my tongue. "American?" he asked in heavily accented English. I nodded. "Vacation?" I considered his question, searching for the right answer. "No," I said finally. "Living. New life." He studied me for a moment, then nodded as if my broken explanation made perfect sense. "New life good. Lisbon good place for new." Each day I ventured a little further from my apartment. The city revealed itself gradually, a hidden courtyard here, a breathtaking viewpoint there. I discovered tiny bakeries with pastries that melted on my tongue, bookstores with English sections where I could lose myself for hours, benches overlooking the ocean where I sat alone but not lonely. I began taking Portuguese lessons at a small language school 3 blocks from my apartment. My classmates were a mix of ages and nationalities, a young Japanese artist, an Australian retiree, a Brazilian teenager with family ties to Portugal. We stumbled through conjugations together, laughing at our mistakes, celebrating small victories. "Why Lisbon?" my teacher asked one day after class. Carmen was perhaps 50, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. I hesitated, uncertain how to condense my story into casual conversation. "My husband and I always dreamed of coming here," I said finally. "He died before we could. It felt right to make the dream real, even if alone." Carmen nodded, something in her expression suggesting she heard what I wasn't saying. "And your family? They did not want to come with you?" "My son," I trailed off, then straightened my shoulders. "We are estranged." "Ah," she patted my hand gently. "Families are complicated. Sometimes distance is the only peace we find." That simple acknowledgement, without judgment or questions, loosened something tight in my chest. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed someone to validate my choice. "Would you like to join us for dinner Saturday?" Carmen asked. "Just a few friends, good food, nothing fancy." I accepted, surprising myself. The old Laura would have declined, claiming unworthiness or concern about imposing. The new Laura was learning to say yes to life. Carmen's apartment was similar to mine, but warmer, lived in, filled with books and art and mismatched furniture that somehow formed a perfect whole. Her friends welcomed me without reservation, a widow like herself, a gay couple who owned a bookstore, a younger woman who taught music at the university. To new beginnings, Carmen toasted, raising her glass of Vinho Verde. New beginnings, we echoed. The conversation flowed easily, slipping between English and Portuguese, touching on politics, books, local gossip. No one asked intrusive questions about my past. No one made me feel like an outsider. By the evening's end, I had invitations to a concert, a book club, and a walking tour of hidden Lisbon gardens. "Thank you," I told Carmen as I was leaving. "I've been alone since I arrived. I didn't realize how much I needed this." She embraced me, European-style kisses on both cheeks. "You are alone but not lonely now, Sim? There is a difference." Walking home under star-scattered skies, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. The future stretched before me, unwritten and mine to shape. The weeks became months. I found part-time work at an international medical clinic, using my nursing skills to help English-speaking patients navigate the Portuguese healthcare system. The routine gave structure to my days, the work itself a familiar comfort amid so much newness. I began collecting small joys. A perfect espresso at my corner cafe, sunset viewed from my balcony, successfully conducting an entire transaction in Portuguese, the satisfaction of helping a frightened American tourist understand her prescription. Each night, I wrote in the journal I'd started on the plane, not focused on the past or Raphael, but on rediscovery. What foods did Laura like? What music made Laura smile? What dreams did Laura still harbor? I was 57, not 87. There was time yet for a second act. The locket remained around my neck, Juan and Raphael's photos still inside. Some pain runs too deep for complete excision. But I no longer opened it daily, no longer needed the tangible reminder of what I'd lost to understand what I'd gained. One bright autumn morning, I stood on my small balcony, coffee warming my hands, watching the city wake below. A neighbor across the alley called a greeting, which I returned with growing confidence in my improving Portuguese. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen, confirming our plans to visit a weekend market. My calendar showed a book club meeting that evening, a language class tomorrow, a concert next week. A life. My life. I touched the locket briefly, a habit not yet broken. "I'm doing okay, Juan," I whispered to the breeze. "I think you'd be proud." The ocean glimmered in the distance, vast and boundless as the future I was slowly, carefully building. Not without pain. There were still nights I woke reaching for a family no longer there, days when grief ambushed me without warning. But increasingly there was joy, simple, unadorned joy in existence. In autonomy. In the discovery that Laura Perez was worth knowing, all on her own. Later that day, sorting through a drawer, I found the small envelope containing Juan's letter, the one I'd opened the night after the bathroom incident. I read it again, his words still a balm after all these months. Your love isn't measured by how much you give up. It's measured by how well you teach others to give back. I hadn't succeeded in teaching Raphael that lesson. Perhaps I never would. But I was finally learning it myself, and that would have to be enough. 1 year to the day after my arrival in Lisbon, I woke to gentle rain against my windows. The apartment looked different now. Bookshelves I'd built myself lined one wall, photographs of my new friends brightened another, potted herbs thrived on the balcony. And in the largest pot, barely visible above the soil, a tiny lemon seedling stretched toward the light. I hadn't planned to grow one. The seeds had been an impulsive purchase from a garden stall in the market, the planting an experiment I didn't expect to succeed. Yet here it was, Juan's legacy continuing an ocean away from its origins. I dressed with care in a blue dress I'd bought to celebrate my 58th birthday, adding a silver necklace Carmen had given me. The locket still hung beside my bed, but I no longer wore it daily. Progress of a sort. My phone chimed with birthday wishes from my Lisbon friends and a reminder about the celebration dinner planned for that evening. As I scrolled through the messages, an unfamiliar email address caught my eye. rperez@gmail.com. My heart stuttered. I hadn't heard from Raphael since leaving, had deliberately maintained that silence, needing the distance to heal. I hesitated before opening it, steeling myself for accusations or manipulation. Instead, I found something entirely unexpected. Dear Mom, it's been a year. I don't know if you'll read this or if this email still reaches you. I don't know if you care to hear from me at all. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I want to say I'm sorry, but those words seem inadequate for what happened. How does one apologize for locking their mother in a bathroom? For treating the woman who sacrificed everything like she was nothing? There aren't words big enough for that kind of regret. You should know that Gabriella left shortly after you did. Our marriage couldn't survive the truth you forced us to face. I've been living alone, working through what happened, trying to understand how I became someone who could treat you that way. I've been seeing a therapist. She's helping me recognize patterns I didn't want to acknowledge. How I blamed you for Dad's death. How I resented your sacrifices because they made me feel indebted. How I let Gabriella push you away because it was easier than facing my own guilt. None of this excuses what we did to you. Nothing could. Michael and Elena Thompson are good people. They've let me visit Dad's lemon tree occasionally. It's thriving under their care. Elena's pregnant now, a little girl due in spring. They're going to name her Laurel. I think it's their way of honoring you, though they've never said so directly. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking to know where you are or for you to respond. I just wanted you to know that the lesson finally took. Too late, but it took. I understand now what Dad's watch was supposed to represent. I wear it every day as a reminder of the man I failed to be, but still hope to become. If you're happy wherever you are, that's all that matters now. You deserve that happiness, Mom. You always did. With love and deepest regrets, Raphael. I read the email 3 times, emotions washing through me in waves, grief, validation, a cautious tendril of hope. Not for reconciliation, that bridge had burned too thoroughly, but for Raphael himself. Perhaps Juan's son wasn't entirely lost after all. I closed the email without replying. Perhaps someday I would. Today wasn't that day. Instead, I stepped onto my balcony, watching the rain gentle into mist over the city I now called home. Below, my neighbors hurried with umbrellas and raincoats. Shopkeepers adjusted awnings. Life continued in its beautiful ordinariness. The lemon seedling glistened with raindrops, its few tiny leaves reaching skyward with determination. I touched one gently, marveling at its resilience. We both made it, I whispered. My phone chimed again, Carmen, confirming our dinner plans. I texted back confirmation, smiling at the easy friendship we developed over the year. She had introduced me to her circle, helped me navigate Portuguese bureaucracy, taught me to cook local dishes, listened without judgment on the rare occasions when I spoke of Raphael and Juan. She had taught me that family could be chosen, not just inherited. I picked up my umbrella and headed downstairs. The cafe owner greeted me by name, handing over my usual espresso with a birthday cannelé on the side. Mano, he said proudly. 1 year. Mano, I agreed, raising the tiny cup in salute. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the cobblestones shining and the air fresh with possibility. I walked slowly, savoring the familiar route to the clinic where I now worked 3 days a week. Patients greeted me, shopkeepers waved. A stray cat I occasionally fed rubbed against my ankles before darting away. A community, a life. Mine. That evening, surrounded by friends in Carmen's warm kitchen, I raised a glass of port as they sang Happy Birthday in an endearing mixture of Portuguese and English. Speech, called Antonio, Carmen's brother and the group's perpetual instigator of toasts. I stood looking around at these people who had become so dear to me in just a year. Carmen with her wise eyes, Eduardo and Paolo from the bookstore, Marisa the music teacher, others who had entered my life through various connections and kindnesses. A year ago, I began, I arrived in Lisbon with 1 suitcase and no plan. I was running away from pain, not toward joy. I didn't know if I could build a life at my age, alone in a country where I couldn't even ask directions. Gentle laughter rippled around the table. But here's what I've learned, I continued. We are never too old to begin again, never too broken to find wholeness, never too lost to create home. I touched the spot where Juan's locket used to rest, a habit not fully abandoned. Someone wise once told me that love isn't measured by how much we give up, but by how well we teach others to give back. I failed with that lesson once, but with all of you, my voice caught slightly. I've been given a second chance to get it right. Carmen reached over to squeeze my hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. To second chances, I said, raising my glass higher, and to chosen family. To Laura, they responded in unison. Later, walking home under stars partially obscured by passing clouds, I felt a sense of completion. The circle of my life had not ended with Raphael's betrayal or my flight. It had simply taken a different shape, one with room for growth, for joy, for peace hard won, and therefore precious. In my apartment, I opened the balcony doors despite the cool night air. The lemon seedling stood small but determined in its pot, a continuation of what Juan had started all those years ago. I opened the locket one last time, looking at the faces inside. Juan in his doctor's coat, Raphael at 5 with untarnished eyes. Then, deliberately, I removed both photos and placed them in a small wooden box on my dresser. Into the empty locket, I placed something new, a tiny photo Carmen had taken of me last month, standing on a viewpoint overlooking the city, arms outstretched, face tilted toward the sun, freedom embodied. They locked me in for hot water, I whispered to the night sky, to the ocean beyond, to Juan's spirit wherever it might be. I unlocked myself for life. I closed the locket around my neck, its weight familiar but its meaning transformed. No longer a memorial to what was lost, but a celebration of what had been found. Outside, a breeze rustled through the lemon seedling's tender leaves. Inside, my heart beat steady and strong, scarred but healing, in a body that finally, truly belonged to me alone. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And if you enjoyed Laura's story, check out The Inheritance She Never Expected and When My Daughter Chose Her Husband Over Me, 2 other stories that are channel favorites.